Hello and welcome back to the channel. We are coming at you in black and white again, and that means it is time to talk about some brand new horror book releases. I have 13 books to tell you about, only one debut this time I think, and one middle grade. I'll try to throw at least one middle grade in there every month. I haven't been successful at that every time, but the one this month sounds really interesting, and it is the last book I will be talking about, so be sure you stay tuned to the end. So like I said, there are 13 books that are coming out in June. Some of them have already been released by this point, some of them have not. I know at the end of my May most anticipated video, I said I was just going to go ahead and do the June one too, and get that out of the way. Did that happen? No. No, it did not. I need to quit saying, this is going to be coming up next week, or I'm just going to go ahead and do this, because it never happens. And I'm sorry, but it is what it is. Better late than never, right? So hopefully you will get some good book recommendations from this video. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So this first book I want to tell you about came out on June 3rd. It is actually a re-release. It was previously published by Sinister Grin Press in 2018. I am talking about Kill Hill Carnage by Tim Meyer. This one is coming from Grindhouse Press, and I'm not sure exactly the page count of this, but once you hear the synopsis, you're going to know why I wanted to include it in this video. In 1991, hell was unleashed upon St. Christopher's summer camp for kids. The killers left behind piles of bodies and rivers of blood. Some say a family of inbred cannibals was responsible. A masked psychopath with a butcher's knife is another popular theory. Some still believe a camp counselor lost his mind and went crazy on everyone with an axe. But there's also this mysterious derelict factory that sits nearby atop Kill Hill, a place where urban legends are manufactured, the grotesque and bizarre. 25 years later, the factory on Kill Hill is still said to be operational, but no one can get near it. It's safely guarded along with the secrets within, but there are a few loose strings, and hitman Frank Harmon has been sent to tie them up. His kill list is short, but the night is long and full of unspeakable horrors. With the help of a few college students on an impromptu camping adventure, Frank must contain the mess at Kill Hill before it spreads to the neighboring towns, before it infects the entire country, before it invades the entire world. These next 4 books all came out on June 7th. The first one is called Aurora by David Koepp. It is 304 pages long and comes from Harper. In Aurora, Illinois, Audrey Wheeler is just trying to get by after her semi-criminal ex-husband split, leaving behind his unruly teenage son. Then the lights go out, not just in Aurora, but across the globe. A solar storm has knocked out power almost everywhere. Suddenly, all problems are local, very local, and Aubrey must assume the mantle of fierce protector of her suburban neighborhood. Across the country lives Aubrey's estranged brother Tom, a fantastically wealthy, neurotically overprepared Silicon Valley CEO. He plans to ride out the crisis in a gilded desert bunker he built for maximum comfort and security. But the complicated history between the siblings is far from over, and what feels like the end of the world is just the beginning of several long overdue reckonings which not everyone will survive. Next up, we have From Below by Darcy Coates. It's 352 pages long, and it comes from Poison Pen Press. Years ago, the SS Arcadia vanished without a trace during a routine voyage. Though a strange, garbled emergency message was broadcast, neither the ship nor any of its crew could be found. 60 years later, its wreck has finally been discovered more than 300 miles from its intended course, a silent graveyard deep beneath the ocean's surface, eagerly waiting for the first sign of life. Cove and her dive team have been granted permission to explore the Arcadia's rusting hull. Their purpose is straightforward: examine the wreck, film everything, and, if possible, uncover how and why the supposedly unsinkable ship vanished. But the Arcadia has not yet had its fill of death, and something dark and hungry watches from below. With limited oxygen and the ship slowly closing in around them, Koepp and her team will have to fight their way free of the unspeakable horror now desperate to claim them. Because once they're trapped beneath the ocean's waves, there's no going back. This next one is called Hell Followed With Us by Andrew Joseph White. It is 416 pages long and comes from Peachtree Teen. This one is a debut. 16-year-old trans boy Benji is on the run from the cult that raised him, the fundamentalist sect that unleashed Armageddon and decimated the world's population. Desperately, he searches for a place where the cult can't get their hands on him, or more importantly, on the bioweapon they infected him with. But when cornered by monsters born from the destruction, Benji is rescued by a group of teens from the local Atchison LGBTQ+ center, affectionately known as the ALC. The ALC's leader, Nick, is gorgeous, autistic, and a deadly shot, and he knows Benji's darkest secret. The cult's bioweapon is mutating him into a monster, deadly enough to wipe humanity from the earth once and for all. Still, Nick offers Benji shelter among his ragtag group of queer teens, as long as Benji can control the monster and use its power to defend the ALC. Eager to belong, Benji accepts Nick's terms, until he discovers the ALC's mysterious leader has a hidden agenda, and more than a few secrets of his own. The last book that came out on June 7th is called Little Bird from Tiffany Meuret? I'm not sure how you say her last name. It's only 226 pages, and it is from Black Spot Books. Freshly divorced and grieving the death of her father, Josie Laurel has caged herself inside her home. To cope with her losses, Josie follows a strict daily routine of work, playing with her dog Poe, and trying to remember to eat a decent meal, and ending each night by drinking copious amounts of vodka. In other words, she's not coping at all. Everything changes when Josie wakes to find a small shrub has sprouted in her otherwise dirt backyard the morning after yet another bender. Within hours, the vine-like plant is running amok, and it's brought company. The appearance of the unwieldy growth has also heralded the arrival of a busybody new neighbor who insists on thrusting herself into Josie's life. The neighbor Josie can deal with, the talking skeleton called Skelly that has perched itself in Josie's backyard on a throne made of vines, however, is an entirely different matter. As the strangely sentient plant continues to grow and twist its tendrils inside Josie's suddenly complicated life, Josie begins to realize her new neighbor knows a lot more about the vines and her bizarre new visitor than she initially lets on. There's a reason Skelly has chosen to appear in Josie's suddenly blooming backyard and insists on pulling her out of her carefully kept self-isolation. All Josie has to do is figure out what that reason is, and she only has a few days to do it, or else she might find herself on the wrong side of catastrophe. These next two books came out on June 14th. The first one is Go Hunt Me from Kelly Devos. It is 304 pages and is from Razor Bill. Alex Rush is ready for the trip of a lifetime. She and her friends have made some creepily awesome films together throughout high school, so with only a few months left before they go their separate ways for college, they're determined to make the best one yet, an epic short film that reimagines the story of Dracula, filmed on location at a remote castle in Romania. But when they get there, it's not quite the majestic setting they planned for. Menacing weapons line the walls, the twisted halls are easy to get lost in, and with no connection to the outside world, the group is unexpectedly off the grid. After just a few hours spent under its roof, Alex and her friends have no trouble imagining how this dark, terrifying castle inspired one of the most enduring horror novels of all time. Only soon they no longer have to use their imaginations to understand the location's terrifying history. Just as they get the film's first shot rolling, one of Alex's friends disappears, and she's nearly certain she saw a cloaked stranger lurking in the shadows. As more members of the group begin to meet an untimely demise, Alex is desperate to stop the bloodshed, even if it means facing a monster she never thought would be let loose. This next one is called The Hangman Feeds the Jackal, a gothic western. It is from Coy Hall. It is 242 pages long and is from Nose Touch Press. Elijah Valero is a gunfighter afflicted with terrifying hallucinations, including a pervasive one of the Hangman out to kill him. Dogged by the relentless specter of the Hangman, Valero mistakenly kills innocent victims and is forced to hide in an abandoned monastery for his own safety and for those of others. Once there, he encounters far greater dangers than the imaginary Hangman, and gains a bid for redemption as he faces down some silver-hungry drifters out to terrorize a town for its riches. Fans of Weird West and Gothic horror will find satisfaction in The Hangman Feeds the Jackal. These next two came out on June 21st. The first one is called Not Good for Maidens by Tori Bovalino. It is 352 pages long and is from Page Street Kids. Lou never believed in superstitions or magic until her teenage aunt Neela is kidnapped to the Goblin Market. The market is a place Lou has only read about. Twisted streets, offerings of sweet fruits, and incredible jewels. Everything, from the food and wares to the goblins themselves, is a haunting temptation for any human who manages to find their way in. Determined to save Neela, Lou learns songs and spells and tricks that will help her navigate this dangerous world and slip past a goblin's defenses. But she only has 3 days to find Neela before the market disappears and her aunt becomes one of them forever. Next is one I probably don't even need to tell you about, but that is going to be The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. It is from Dutton and is 368 pages long. Casey Fletcher, a recently widowed actress trying to escape a streak of bad press, has retreated to the peace and quiet of her family's lake house in Vermont. Armed with a pair of binoculars and several bottles of liquor, she passes the time watching Tom and Catherine Royce, the glamorous couple who live in the house across the lake. They make good viewing. Tom, a tech innovator, is rich, and a former model, Catherine, is gorgeous. One day on the lake, Casey saves Catherine from drowning, and the two strike up a budding friendship. But the more they get to know each other and the longer Casey watches, it becomes clear that Catherine and Tom's marriage is not as perfect and placid as it appears. When Catherine suddenly vanishes, Casey becomes consumed with finding out what happened to her. In the process, she uncovers eerie, darker truths that turn a tale of voyeurism and suspicion into a story of guilt, obsession, and how looks can be very deceiving. Coming out on June 24th is going to be We Can Never Leave This Place from Eric LaRocca. It is 106 pages and from Journal Stone. When you're given a gift, something else gets taken away. A precocious young girl with an unusual imagination is sent on an odyssey into the depths of depravity. After her father dies violently, young Mara is surprised to find her mother welcoming a new guest into their home, claiming that he will protect them from the world of devastation and destruction outside their door. A grotesque and thrilling dark fantasy, We Can Never Leave This Place is a harrowing portrait of inherited grief and familial trauma. These last 3 books all come out on June 28th. The first one is called Lingering by Chris Coppel. It is 224 pages long and comes from Cranthorpe Milner Publishers. When Paul and Christy purchase Croft House, they are both looking forward to a new start. Christy's abusive father is dying and she is ready to put the past well and truly behind her. But the house has other ideas. They soon realize there is something in the house, something that's trying to communicate with them. In their fear, they ask a local psychic to remove this entity, and in doing so, release something far, far worse. Next up we have Our Crooked Hearts by Melissa Albert. It is 352 pages long and comes from Flatiron Books. The Suburbs, Right Now. 17-year-old Ivy's summer break kicks off with an accident, a punishment, and a mystery. A stranger whose appearance in the middle of the road, in the middle of the night heralds a string of increasingly unsettling events. As the days pass, Ivy grapples with eerie offerings, corroded memories, and a secret she's always known, that there's more to her mother than meets the eye. The city, back then, Dana has always been perceptive, and the summer she turns 16, with the help of her best friend and an ambitious older girl, her gifts bloom into a heady fling with the supernatural, set in a city of magical possibilities and secret mystics. As the trio's aspirations darken, they find themselves speeding toward a violent breaking point. Years after it began, Ivy and Dana's shared story will come down to a reckoning among a daughter, a mother, and the dark forces that they never should have messed with. The last one on this list is going to be the middle grade story I told you about. It is called The Clackity by Lora Senf. It is 288 pages long and comes from Athenaeum Books for Young Readers. Evie Von Wraith lives in Blight Harbor, the 7th most haunted house in America, with her aunt Desdemona, the local paranormal expert. Des doesn't have many rules except one: stay out of the abandoned slaughterhouse at the edge of town. But when her aunt disappears into the building, Evie goes searching for her. There she meets the Clackity, a creature who lives in the shadows and scenes of the slaughterhouse. The Clackity makes a deal with Evie to help get Des back in exchange for the ghost of John Jeffrey Pope, a serial killer who stalked Blight Harbor 100 years earlier. Evie must embark on a journey into a strange other world filled with hungry witches, penny-eyed ghosts, and a memory thief, all while being pursued by a dead man whose only goal is to add Evie to his collection of lost souls. Alright, so those are the 13 horror books that I thought you should know about that are coming out in June 2022. Which of these have you never heard of? I would love to know. And which of these are you going to add to your TBR? Or which are already on your TBR? I would love to know that. If you have already picked up some of these, if you've read any of these, let me know all of that down in the comments. I would love to know your opinions. I would say that this is going to be my last video for the month. I'm not exactly sure, so I'm not going to make any guarantees. Maybe I will pop up another video before the end of the month. We will see. I don't really have anything scheduled. I was tagged by Craig and David over at Shelf Possessed a few weeks ago to do this telephone book cover tag, and I've tried to come up with some interesting connections, and it is really hard. It is a lot harder than it appeared, so if I can squeeze that one out somehow, I will get that out there. I'm so sorry, you guys, if you're watching this. I really tried to get something together, but I would love to do it. So if I can come up with something, I will do that next. If not, the next video you will see will probably either be my July TBR or my June wrap-up, depending on how the rest of the month goes. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next one.